Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. I think we're going to go outside the box today and look at a tangential field of ed tech, right?
Yes, yeah, this one's personal. I'm really excited about this. Today, we have the CEO of Integrity Advocate, an ed tech expert, a board member, a former police officer, and my cousin, Mr. Brandon Smith. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Happy to be on. Love that you're repping Fernandina Beach on the sweatshirt. So
that's right, Pirates.
So let's go.
Let's do it. Yes. So look, to give you a little bit of background, Brandon is my cousin. My mom and Brandon's mom are siblings, sisters. Aunt Melinda, as I call her, Aunt Mimi, as we all affectionately call her. And yeah, we are from Fernandina Beach, Florida. So that is the upper corner, Julie. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yeah,
the
I
upper
have friends
corner
there.
of Florida, near it's Nassau County, near Duval County, and we are basically relatives, man. But Brandon has an amazing story, career story. Had a career transition that is just really a remarkable. And now the CEO of a major company, and you've been all over the C-suite, I know, as chief operating officer and other things before. So I just want to talk all that with you, but also just what's going on in ed tech, because I think there's just so many similarities to what we're dealing with and doing here in HR that I thought would be great for the listeners. So, Julie, you want to do the honors?
So, Brandon, I think ed tech is one of those things that you don't say, I want to be this when I grow up. And so always curious to know, how did you get into the ed tech field? What was your path like? What brought you here?
Yeah. So funny enough, I was working in higher ed at the time. It wasn't on my radar. I had a recruiter reach out that said they were from a software company. It sounded really interesting at the time. I was working on some accreditation stuff for Kaplan Higher Education. And this product was essentially saying that schools were having a difficulty in, managing accreditation and putting reports, documentation together. I was able to really empathize with that since I was doing it. And I was like, that sounds amazing. And so at the time I was taking up the opportunity. It was a chance to learn something new. Had no plan really to do it forever. But then when I got in it, I really loved it. And so I've been in ed tech ever since.
Awesome. And you stay because what's the thing that makes you kind of stay in this space?
Yeah. So, I think whenever I was working at Kaplan, it's not your traditional, education setting. It's not your typical student. And I really struggled with the mission there because it was very profit driven. But at the end of the day, we were there to serve students. And I really didn't feel that we did a great job of that all the time. There was definitely students in the programs that probably should not have been. And there was a lot of debt they accrued and, all the problems that come with that. I think transitioning into this, it was really an opportunity to kind of help the student on their journey as they went to college and were trying to prepare for their career. It really is to try to make things easier, right? Be it through learning or just, automation or something like that. It really does feel like you're giving back and helping the student. And then I also think you're still in that world where you're still working with administrators and people that are in education that have the same, values and things that you have. So you kind of get both sides of it, where I feel like whenever you're in higher ed, you're either on the administration side or you're on the student side. There's no you're on one side of the fence or the other. So
no bridge to walk.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Isn't it fun? I was just going to say, how fun and interesting it is. I'm always fascinated. I think I've been this way forever. I've always been fascinated how people make money, like the millions of ways in America and in the world that you can generate revenue and business. And it's always fascinating to me how people just sort of land where they land. And most of us aren't that purposeful. I worked with someone once in HR, brilliant CHRO. She had a journalism degree, and she's like, I thought I was going to be working for a newspaper. You know what I mean? And here I am. I never thought about this. But I think that's so cool, man. I love it. But look, I know your story, right, about where your career started and where your career has gone. It's remarkable. I applaud you. I think it's hard for people to make a hard pivot like that. And I know you went through a lot of stress with it, but could you, to the extent that you can, do you mind sharing a bit about that story, about what you did, coming out of high school and before you got into ed tech and just why you made a career transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, very blue collar town, blue collar family, that I came from. And so I wanted to go to school. Wasn't sure, really didn't have the environment, if you will, at home to support me down that path of going to a 4-year university, going off and having a good time. So I was like, I'm going to have to do this while I'm working. Was really interested in law enforcement, had family members on both sides of my family, that worked in law enforcement. I always looked up to them, really respected the uniform, kind of like what that meant. Again, I'm a theme here, but like the ability to give back to people, it really resonated with me. And so, probably my sophomore summer going into my junior year of high school, I decided like I'm going to go the law enforcement route. I knew I wanted to keep my nose clean, keep good grades so that I could go down that path. So I started right away working towards that. Graduated, went to law enforcement academy in the state of Florida. That's done at the community college system. So there's not like a standalone academy that you go to. That really helped me from an education standpoint because going to, at the time, it was Florida Community College of Jacksonville. You also kind of got an associate's degree as part of your work going to academy. So graduated with an associate's degree, had my certificate, passed the state exam, and of course had opportunities to go wherever in the state, but really wanted to work at home and be close to my family. And so joined the Nassau County Sheriff's Office, started off as just a patrolman, went into school resource, kind of learned that side of things, working with kids, protecting our schools. Very quickly found kind of a knack for making arrests that were related to like narcotics, searching cars, like all those fun things that come with that. Very quickly found myself in canine. And so that was like a year of school that we worked and then left our shift early to go to academy at night. Took a year of training, got a dog that was certified in both identification and narcotics, but also was like search and someone's running, you turn the dog loose on like a felony apprehension. And so started doing canine. I was already good without the dog at kind of finding drugs and spotting people and picking up on, the clues and stuff that you kind of learn through time. And so I was actually asked to be on a task force with the DEA. So the DEA deems certain areas of our country like high drug trafficking areas. And I was put on a task force in Jacksonville. So I actually worked over in Duval and primarily focused on drug interdiction on Interstate 95, which runs up the eastern seaboard. And so had a lot of success there, finding, large sums of money in vehicles being transported, large sums of narcotics. Really, really enjoyed that. Knew I wanted to have a career that continued in narcotics, but being on the interstate in the Florida 100-degree heat where you see the waves literally coming up off the pavement and you're crawling under cars and poking around with screwdrivers, like you can only do that for so long and you start getting tired of it. Made the transition to go into street level narcotics where you actually work undercover. And yeah, I think the last 5 years, we'll call it, of my 12-year career there, was working street level narcotics, where you're going out making hand-to-hand purchases or you're using informants to build cases on people in the community that are selling drugs out of houses and things like that. And, it was honestly one of the best times of my life. I loved the job that I had picked. I was so passionate about it. I was just kind of like a natural, like I fit in wherever I went. It didn't matter what team I worked on. It didn't matter who I was working with. I really just had like a vibe going. Very successful, very early. Love the court side of it. That was always a challenge because it was like one thing to arrest someone, but it was a whole different thing to be able to go and testify and like really stand on the evidence and stuff you had created for the case to actually get a conviction. And so got really interested in the courts and all that. And so I was at a point where I was kind of like ready to move up into like a leadership role. Very small department, not a lot of growth opportunities. Of course, sheriffs are elected. And so, we had an election and we had a sheriff that was in office. And I started, unfortunately noticing some things that kind of went around like the oath I had taken as a law enforcement officer. Noticed people were cutting corners, noticed that things were missing from inventory rooms and things like that, which is a really uncomfortable setting to be in, both because like I said, you took an oath to do the right thing. And if your people you're working with are not following that same oath, there's a huge problem, right? The problem though is that like it's looked down upon, unfortunately, in that profession to kind of cross that line and kind of tell on your fellow,
Yeah.
officers that you work with. And so I tried internally to kind of say, hey, like, not really trying to tattle, but like there's some things that we need to change. We could maybe solve this through policy or, some better security practices, like some logging in the rooms and stuff where inventory is, things like that would have some accountability.
Controls. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of fell on deaf ears. Unfortunately with those things, when people start getting comfortable doing it, not only does it happen more often, it starts getting bigger and bigger, and in my eyes, like worse and worse. I mean, it's all bad,
Yeah.
right? But like they start doing worse things. I started having informants call me saying, "Hey, like the guys you're working with, they're selling stuff," or
Wow.
you guys seize property and they have it listed on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, and their phone number that the sheriff's office is providing them a cell phone with is the number listed to call to like buy this
Oh
stuff,
my.
right? And yeah, and so I was at a real crossroads because I knew that if I spoke up, like it could put me in a situation where it ended my career. Because again, unfortunately, it's looked down upon. But I knew the right thing to do is like from just like my own personal values. Like I'm a man of integrity. I was like, I can't not say something. And so I reached out to really at the time the only people I felt I could trust, which was someone at the FBI. Actually, my dad's sister, she knew someone pretty high up in the Jacksonville office through her church. She made the introduction. And I think for about 18 months in working with them, we were working on reporting different things, findings, taking photos. I actually was recording when we would go on scenes and things like that, recording fellow officers and stuff, which again, having informants, having
Yeah.
them tell you, man, like, man, I don't want to wear the wire. It's like, it's not a big deal. Just do it. It's like you're helping yourself out here. I was like, that's the first time I could actually empathize with them where I'm like, I get it now. Like, it is
Yeah.
really stressful to do this.
Yeah.
And so during that time, though, like, I wasn't going to wait around and see like what was going to happen. I was like, I have to really position myself I have a family. So I was like, I have to position myself to have something to transition into. At that time, I was like, all I know is being a police officer, though, right? So I was like, what can I actually do? But I went ahead and got my 4-year degree. I started teaching as an adjunct at the college, and I actually found out like I was good at it. Like my feedback from my class, from surveys, from my peers that would sit in and evaluate me, I got really positive feedback, and so I was like, I think this is something I could do. Like my skills transfer, and I really love the profession so much. Like it would be like a natural transition for me if it ever needed to happen. And then, whenever the sheriff at the time got suspicious and the administration got suspicious and they started doing their own investigation. We probably could have done the recording thing a better way at the time. Like, the FBI is like, it's a process to manage like an informant, right? And I mean, essentially that's what I was for them. It's meeting in the middle of the night. It's getting the recording device. It's downloading it to your own computer and saving it and so forth. But like, I think because of my position, it was like I could just download it myself to my work computer and secretly send them the email, right, from like a personal email account. And we were doing things like that. Well, when they got suspicious, they came in and they knew something was going on because it was like rumblings were making it to them on the back end. And they came in and seized everyone's work computers. They sent them off to be forensically, looked at. And then they kind of found like, okay, I'd been making these recordings. Kind of a funny story. They didn't really know what I was up to. I don't think they really expect someone would do that
Yeah.
internally. So their position was they were just going to call me in and they basically are going to say like, as a law enforcement officer, we essentially have to give you the authority to investigate crime, and no one authorized you to do an internal investigation here. Like you're investigating something you were not
Yeah.
authorized to do. And so you should not have been making these recordings. And that's when I had to divulge, well, like I actually wasn't doing it for me. I was actually doing it for the FBI. And so at that
Yeah.
point, it had come to a point where in the investigation, I no longer, I mean, I already didn't feel safe doing it. But at that point, I'm like, my family's actually in jeopardy now because these people know that I've been doing this and who
Yeah.
knows what they'll do. Right. And so I left that day, went and I resigned. And yeah, I called the person that I was an adjunct for. I was like, can I get some more days? And just so happened, they were like, actually, the program has grown so much, we need to add a full-time faculty member. And they were like, if you want it, like you're the best adjunct we have, it's yours. And so
Wow.
honestly, it was luck in a sense, but like
Fate.
preparation, obviously. Yeah. And it was like, I made the transition no problem. And then I started my new career in higher ed. So
Wow. I mean, look, I'm going to go back to this because I remember when you were going through this somewhat, right? I mean, just to say, like, you literally were all in on this, man. You had changed your appearance. I think you were getting a different tattoo every time I saw you.
Yeah.
I don't think you had tattoos before that, if I recall correctly. Like, you were
No.
getting piercings. I mean, you had fake Facebooks with just massive pounds of like drugs and money and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I mean, how much anxiety and stress did you have during all this? Like, I mean, it's like I'm stressing out like right now. I got to mow my lawn later. And I'm like, I
Did you
got
ever
that. I
ask,
got,
like, are you sure you're the good guy in this whole
yeah,
story?
I know. I
Yeah.
got,
For sure. No, I mean, like I said, it was super stressful. It's already a dangerous job, right? Like
yeah,
I had to continue doing my job, and so when you're working undercover, you already have that against you. You're already paranoid about like your family's safety. Then, whenever you're actually doing it against the guys you're working with, it was really two things at the time. Like one of the things that really scared me is I had been buying narcotics from this person that was coming up from Jacksonville, and I'd been buying it pretty regularly, and we were building like a long term investigation on the person. And the person had literally never suspected that, I was the police. I never questioned it. The many times he had sold to me, like it should not have been a thing. We actually had started asking some questions internally about this person and their associates and stuff because we were like ready to take that next step in the ladder, so to speak. And all of a sudden, one of the people got really interested in why are you worried about them? Like, I know that person. I went to high school with them, and it was like, oh, that's not good. The very next thing, because there was already another deal set up, when I showed up for it, the person came. So I was like, okay, like it's good. I didn't get tipped off. But really quickly, I found out I really do think I was tipped off because it was kind of like, I know who you are. I know what you're doing. And the deal's not happening. And it was like, other than the point of just telling me, it was like, okay, like I'm actually really in danger now. So I think that kind of safety was like the thing that kept me up the most at night. In terms of like, was somebody going to come to my house or something? I never felt like that during the investigation until like it actually came out. And then I was like, now, like
yeah,
this could turn into something really big. And so, yeah, I think that it was a very tumultuous time in my life, just trying to balance and be normal, like which is
right.
already hard to do when you're
Yep.
taking on this persona, and the added stress. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I had like weight swings up and down. I had headaches and stuff like medically, like challenges that I went through, and just not being able to sleep and stuff like that. It's definitely never had anxiety like that before or
Yeah.
since.
Yeah. I mean, and a family too, right? You had a young family, obviously safety, but now you're trying to navigate a career change. And for most people, that's stressful anyway. Trying to make a pivot, especially to such a hard change from where you came from. Obviously, some luck that was put into place by your hard work in terms of your adjunct work. But how much was all this like just compartmentalizing the career change? What were your thoughts and anxieties about that? I mean, not knowing that you had this opportunity yet.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I obviously was like, I'm going to provide for my family no matter what. Like I said, coming from a blue collar town, I was like, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I could go work at the mill, which a lot of people
Yeah,
here do that, stay behind. And I was like, I mean, I'm sure that I'll be okay, but I was like, I'm going to get stuck in this thing where like I don't want to do it, right? Which is
yeah,
I didn't want that
Yeah.
for myself. Yeah, and I mean, and I think there was a lot of self doubts, right? It was like, hey, I've been here, I've grown really fast, like from a promotion standpoint and the opportunities I've had, but like these skills don't translate somewhere else. Like if I go start a new career somewhere, like they're going to be like, you're starting from day one, And so I'm
yeah,
like, I feel like I'm behind, and so I had a lot of anxiety around like what that was going to look like, and like I shared, like it really turned out just to be luck, fate, a blessing, whatever
yeah,
you want to call it. But it was like it transitioned so well that I was able to teach what I knew, and honestly, like, I felt like I had the advantage in that situation. I didn't know it going in, but once I got there, it was like, I actually have the application of doing this job, where most of the people in education are people that just teach it, right? Like, they study the theories and
you've
the
lived it. Yeah,
principles, and I've lived
yeah,
it, and so I can actually tell you, like, the book says this, but this is reality. When you go out in the
yeah,
workforce, like, this is and I think that that's why I also was able to relate to the students so much, and so,
yeah.
I think call it a month in, I was like, I'm going to kill this. Like,
Yeah.
I have no more fears anymore. I'm like, rip that off. No looking
That's
back. So
awesome. This just looking back on all that experience, right? Like, I mean, I think I hate to use the word luck because I don't think anything's luck. I think you earned this, right? And you may have found luckily found the path that you didn't know was there. But going through that, like in that period of time where you don't know what your next thing's going to be, like what would your advice be to someone going through that? Like, how do you and maybe it doesn't happen in a month. Maybe it happens 6 months or a year later. Like they've got to be patient, I'm sure. But what advice would you give to a career changer or career pivoter right now, especially right now with all that's going on? Like, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think law enforcement aside, just making the transition change for me, like right now in my position, I've had a lot of people come to me because the state of ed tech, which we're going to get into, and they're just like, like I think I want to do something different. And my advice to them is like, don't just make a jump. Like you have to be strategic about it.
Yeah.
Like people come to me and they say, hey, I went to school to be a software engineer. It's not working out. I can't find a job or the pay is not competitive. So I'm just going to do security now because that's what everybody's looking for. And I'm like, no, don't do that. If you're not passionate about it, if it's not something that you're going to give your whole self to and invest yourself in, like you're going to be miserable in doing that. So
Yeah.
my advice to them is like, don't chase a job. You need to find something you are passionate about. I think this is the same thing right now with AI. Even like everybody's coming saying like I'm going to just transition into AI because that's where the world's
Yeah.
going, and it's like it may be, but it's like if you don't love it or you're not passionate about it, like I wouldn't say do that. And so
Right.
I think you do have to kind of rely on your background. So I think one of the big things that allowed me to transition also into higher ed was not just my knowledge or like my years of experience. Going back to that like blue collar town, like working in law enforcement here, it's a very interesting community. You have like the blue collar all the way to the elite or the rich, if you will. I had to build some real EQ, like working
Yeah.
the street to learn how to talk to a drug addict or the poorest of the poor, and then transition and going to like the Ritz Carlton, which we happen to have, and dealing with someone there that's driving a Rolls Royce or a Bentley. And so I
Hmm.
think that like using those experiences, look at like your skill set. What do I have? What can I be good at? And then
Yeah.
also, what am I passionate about? That's how you really pick and say, okay, like I'm going to hone in on this.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think there's no missing though, like having a toe in, and maybe it's more about awareness. No matter what you're doing in your life, having an awareness that, oh, I'm learning a skill, I'm applying a skill, this is mildly interesting. This I would rather choke and die than do this ever again. Like just having that awareness and feeling behind is something
Yeah.
that, we hear people say all the time about making a career change. That anxiety on the one side is the counterpart to recruiters who are thinking linear job paths and, they don't know how to career path. And so both sides have to, kind of get with the program and be a little bit more broadly aware for the magic to happen, right?
Yeah. I work with a lot of veterans that are transitioning out of the military, and they often have a ton of self-doubt. Like, I can't because I'm, whatever, fill in the blank. And what I always tell them is like, look, you have those skills. You just don't have the same language as the other party, right? And so, or the other side. And so I think that people, I think a lot of times it's just natural to have self-doubt, right? It's not, you're coming out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's not safe anymore. You don't know the world that you're coming into sometimes. But I think to your point, if you can align it to a passion and around the skills that you do have, you'll make your way to something that is, rewarding. So, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that, man. I think there's a lot of folks right now that are probably contemplating pivots because
Yeah.
one, their jobs have gone away. We see a lot of folks, being laid off lately. There's a mix of why that's happening. There's an opportunity to pivot now more than ever with the creator economy, with AI. There's so many options, and I think that I applaud you for being persistent, right, and trying to find a way to take those skills that you have and put them into a new meaningful career. So, congrats that you made it out, man.
No, thanks. Yeah, I think too that like one thing that stands out now looking back at the time when I was making these jumps, I didn't know, but I think now is like, top of mind to me is at the time, like being in like law enforcement, working for a government entity or like making a jump and working for like an education entity that's funded by the state or something like that. Like their cultures are like what they are, right? But it's
Yeah,
like, you know that like, okay, it's stable, it's this, it's that. And I think some people take that into account. Going into the private sector was also kind of eye-opening for me in the sense that you really need to know, like, is this founder's plan to stay or is it backed by some kind of, venture capitalist or private equity? Because really and truthfully, like that stuff also changes the dynamic of the company you're joining. And at the time I was looking for a job and I was like, oh, the person interviewing me, I like them, like I can work for them. But I just didn't know, like, okay, like the culture and the influence of like the company and like what they're able to do, or like because of their goals, like it could influence my day to day. And I think it took some maturity to find that out. And so I would also encourage people to do your homework, like know who you're joining when you join a company. understand the culture. It's like a real thing, and understand who's backing it. It's like pulling the levers behind the scene, because that really can
Yeah.
influence the day to day, and it will impact you in your job at some point.
I feel like there you're really starting to pivot and talk more about the ed tech thing that you fell into, right? Where it's like a lot of innovation, it's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, it's a lot of, startup things are happening in the ed tech space versus in the,
Yeah.
the teaching role or the faculty role where, yeah, you know who you're working with there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I want to transition over to that, man. I mean, just to talk about ed tech, because I mean, I don't spend a lot of time in that world. I mean, I obviously see what Workday is building. They do a lot of education stuff for running, operations and that sort of thing, ERP for schools, for students, that sort of thing. But I think that there's a lot of similarities, right, in what they're going through. I noticed there's a slowness to adopt, right? There's a resistance to change. There's an older guard and a younger guard that's kind of coming in and expecting tech. But talk about that. Like, what's going on? What's the pulse in the ed tech world right now? A lot of great technology coming online for everyone. But what's kind of where we've come from and where we are now in ed tech?
Yeah. So for the longest, the past 15 years or so, like if you could get in and you could sell to a university and your tool was really adding value, I mean, it was like on lock. Like you were the incumbent. No one was beating you out. Like retention rates were great for the long term. Like that was the old world. The new world is like budgets are always in concern. Enrollments are down. They're not sure what's going on with funding from current administration. And so there's just a lot of fears around spend. There's layoffs happening, et cetera. And so before, where you could say, okay, like the renewal's coming up for the next year, reach out 90 days in advance and get it signed. Now it's like, hey, you're in a pool of tools that are on the table for consideration. We gotta narrow them down. So like, can you work with us
Yeah.
on price? Can you, and so a lot of that has turned into lowering the price just to keep the customers. I also think that it's with them having less people on their side to facilitate and be the administration for that tool, that's gotten harder. So like these ed tech companies not only are cutting their rates, but they're also having to supplement the staff to like, implement and
Yeah.
execute. That's been a challenge. It's also funny you mentioned the old guard and new guard. I don't know how much people are thinking about this, but I have seen it. It's like a real thing in the past, 3 to 5 years, where you have these like tenured deans and stuff that have been in the seats for a really long time. And all of a sudden it's like those people are retiring and moving on. And you have these new people that are getting put in these roles. And you have like a first time dean. It's interesting because they don't know how to buy. They don't even understand the procurement
Yeah.
process on their side. And so what I found is like if ed tech companies are going to thrive and succeed or have any chance right now, is you can't just sell to them the ways of old. You have to adjust. You have to now start thinking about, how do I consult this person and tell them this is the next thing you need to do internally. This is your next step, or this is the thing you need to ask for. You're going to have a CISO that's going to come in and say, hey, like we have to worry about FERPA or student privacy. Like, I need this information. Well, we already have it for you. Why don't you just send this to that person and that'll help you out? I think earning that trust and like more like coming at it from like, I'm a partner to help you be successful in your new role is like what is actually helping people close business right now. Whereas if you stick to the old playbook, like it's not working. And so, I've seen that be successful. We've also seen just like students on their own electing out of higher ed altogether and just, chasing things on their own. And so a lot of the traditional like ed tech products that were like our end customer is just, an institution or a university. They are now saying like, well, we have all this content and we technically could serve these people on a B2C instead of a B2B. And
Yeah.
they're just directly selling to these students to kind of offset their losses and revenues and growth. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot moving around, but I think generally that's what you would get if you ask somebody in the space of what's been happening.
Are you referring to more of like the certificates that are coming around? There's a lot more certificate
Yeah,
programs and like small little I wouldn't say degrees,
micro
but
learning.
yeah, micro learnings, right? That are bundled where it's like 6 weeks and you get this, whatever. Is that what you're talking about? I see
Yeah,
a lot more of
absolutely.
those.
So you'll see like, ChatGPT is big, right? Like this new AI
Yeah.
stuff. You'll see universities like Florida or like Vanderbilt or, whoever, they're offering like these free courses or certifications that kids can do. And so companies like us will come in and say like, well, we can proctor it for you. We'll give it for
Mhm.
free too to get our name out there. But then the student ends up with like a certificate and being like
Uh,
a, ChatGPT engine prompt engineer or something like that. they're doing it because they're trying to level up because the marketplace is tough right now. And so they're doing whatever they can do to get that edge, to have that resume that says like, I've put in the work and, try to get that job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And, most of the learning now, even if kids are on ground going at campus, like they're still using a learning management system, or they're still
Yeah.
like, it's still virtually happening in that regard. And so these LMSs already have the functionality to deliver that content and to deliver that certificate. And so for them, it was like a very easy flip of the switch to just say, we'll serve you directly.
Right.
Hey, Brandon, as learning gets more and more granular and you get these smaller bites, are you actively seeing the innovation tied to blockchain for credentialing? And, I mean, to get a 4-year degree is one thing, and to be able to blockchain, kind of validate and verify those credentials. Now, if it
Yeah.
comes in smaller and smaller bite-sized pieces, is that something that is brewing behind the scenes, or is that still, kind of an aspiration?
I'm not name dropping just, people that are out there. There's Credly, there's Credible, there's some different companies that do exactly what you're saying. I think it's a big need. And it's one of the things in the proctoring world that we talk about because, say you're Google and you have an online course offering for Google search ads or something, more generic. Like people can just go on and screenshot a copy and Photoshop and put their name on it. Like, how do you know if the person really did it? Well, if we can facilitate that exam and make sure that, Pete really is Pete and he took the exam and it was him, why would we not bring somebody like an Credible or Credly into that and then have a digital certificate
Yeah.
or, like you said, through blockchain, be able to have an employer go validate it? Like that has to be where we go. I think for so long, the higher ed institutions have like kind of held that and, they've held transcripts and things like that. And we've relied on those. Like, I think we need the same rigor around all these certificates that are being issued all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
use
sure.
something called ID Me. I don't know if everyone knows what that is. The government gives it to us to be able to show our military credentials. And in that has my degrees. And I believe you can go in there because it's through the university. I only have a few things in there, but also because there's integrations, I think. And so you can also have like, it'll ask you if you have like certificates like nursing or, licenses, I guess is what it would be. So not
Right.
blockchain, I don't believe. But I think that there is a huge opportunity for that, right? To be able to sort of credentialize, to Julie's point, all those things.
Why wouldn't you end up with like the E-Verify equivalent? HR is
Yeah.
big on E-Verify, so why wouldn't you end up with the E-Verify equivalent of your accreditations and your learnings, essentially, in
Yeah.
some not too distant future?
We're actually hearing a lot on the HR front too, in the proctoring world. So the identity piece is huge for one, but companies are doing different tests and stuff as part of the interview process. Like they're asking for that. I can see a world where the HRS systems are actually asking companies like an ID.me or somebody like that to verify that the work is really theirs and kind of give some legitimacy to the resume that's being presented. Because we all know people embellish, of course, but I think there's also bad actors that are just flat out lying to get roles as well. And you want to weed those out.
Just thinking about like just the education space. I mean, in the HR world, like digital adoption has become very much, I think, of the last few decades. It feels like all we talk about. I'm sure we'll be talking about it for a long, long time. There's so many companies that need to move. But like, is that similar in the ed tech world? Is there this push to digitize? Like one of the things that's happened in HR, I think, is, we've got our standard sort of ERP solutions and HCM platforms that are out there, but they can't do everything or they don't do everything. And so often what we've seen is the stacks are growing for HR or operations, right? There's 10, 12 things.
Yeah.
Oh, we need another thing to solve the thing that the thing doesn't do, And so we've talked about that a lot, Julie, like having to go into your CFO and say, hey, we need another thing to go on top of the $10 million investment we made over here. Like it's got to be awful.
A consultant comes around and says, but you have 75 things. Nobody can do
You already got a
75
bunch of things.
tools every day,
Is that stack growing for ed tech, or are they normalizing to a single platform in a lot of ways? Or what's that like?
Yeah, so if we flip over to like the M&A side of things, that's exactly where things are going. People are like, in this climate, to make it affordable, the stickiness for it to remain, rather than just being a standalone product, you need to have an offering that really is like an end-to-end solution. So it goes from admissions all the way through, if they have boards or something, an entire platform. And so, from what I've witnessed, all the M&A activity is definitely indicating that is what's going on right now in ed tech.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I think it becomes like it's almost like balance sheet. Well, not balance sheet, but like business case fatigue. You know what I mean? Like I've got a business case for all of these things in my stack, and why do I need all these things when I bought something that I thought was the thing? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting conundrum, like for everyone now, even in our own
Yeah.
personal lives. Like I keep, it's like you think like, okay, I've got Chat GPT, I'm good. No, well, no, you got to have the other thing to do this, and you got to
Right.
have the other thing to do that. The stack keeps growing and the costs keep compounding. But look, one of the other things I think you guys have some of the, I think either payroll or HR organizations that you help with proctoring as well. It's not just limited to universities, right?
Yeah. Like I was saying, like people want these skills assessments,
Hmm.
like your Myers-Briggs test, things like that. They want to make sure that like it's not really about like are they cheating on the exams? It's more
Yeah,
of like they're making sure the real person is who they say they are that's
yeah,
taking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're wanting to make sure that these candidates are legitimate. They're also trying to just I don't know how prevalent this really is. It's not my area of expertise, but there's also just been a lot of like people because they work remote, they're trying to work for multiple companies at a time. And so, there's
Yeah.
some of
yeah,
that stuff going on. And they're like, how do we cut down on that? Like let's make the interview process like more rigorous, have some more guardrails around it. Proctoring's obviously a component of that. Another thing too that we've been being asked about is document review. So, like I was saying, you can cheat and screenshot and Photoshop a certificate. There's also people that internationally are trying to work and stuff, and they're asking like, can you guys through technology scan ID cards and passports? And sometimes when people are coming on a visa, there's like bank statements and stuff involved, and they're like, we want to make sure that like the person's really legitimate, and so whether we do that or if it's another tool that does it, like they are asking a lot of questions like that on validation of the actual in person that they're interacting with.
that seems like that's going to grow, right? As there's a lot
Yeah.
of nefariousness in that whole space.
I feel like that's a whole area too, as you said, Brandon, that you need to validate who is who they say they are, whether it's the HR context or the fintech context or the ed tech context. I mean, there's this
Absolutely.
whole validation activity that you want to know who it is and what they're doing, and that's legitimately tied to them. That is a big nut to solve broadly.
Yeah. Brandon, what's the tone with AI in terms of like the universities and education? Like, I mean, the pros and cons for say the universities and the entities as well as the students.
I hate to say this, but it's true. Like the people that work in these universities, they're kind of like technology dinosaurs. Like we're
Hmm.
like 10 years past them. It's like, I remember when Windows 95 was like, we're no longer supporting this. People were like, I haven't used Windows 95 in like a decade. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And it's like all of our labs are still running that. And it's like, how? So,
Yeah.
I mean, they legitimately are like these dinosaurs. I think for their end, they have not done a good job implementing policies or like what's allowed or what's not allowed. And they've just come in with a sledgehammer and just been like, this is bad. Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's not though. Right. It's like, it's actually helping students. It's actually, if they're using it to their benefit for the good, like it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm happy to see that like, both from like our federal government level and some of the state levels, like they're starting to roll things out that are like going to require it. I think until they're hands forced for the most part, they're not really going to embrace it and do something with it. They're going to punt, or kick the can, whatever you want to say, as long as they can. It's interesting though, because on the flip side of it, all the conversations that vendors and ed tech have with them, it's like, well, what's your AI strategy? What are
Yeah.
you doing for AI? Is your AI ethical? And it's like, come on, you can't
Yeah.
ask that question without
Yeah.
looking at yourself in the mirror. But yeah, they've been super hesitant to it. I think if it wasn't for the companies like in ed tech that they work with, they really wouldn't even know what's possible. The companies that are out there that are trying to, they're focused on cheating and things like that, making a level playing field. Those are the companies that are really in front of it that are kind of fighting that battle for them right now while they're
Mhm.
waiting to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. Julie, I don't know if I told you this, but when we were out in Napa at the Workday Innovation Summit, they had the University of Florida on stage to talk about how they're using AI. And I was really impressed, Brandon. They are aggressively, they're very forward. They're very, very modern. They've invested. They are doing everything they can to skill their students, give their students the opportunity to play around. They're labbing things. They're just really, 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 I thought it was one of the most advanced university discussions that I've heard. I'm not a Gator fan, by the way, but I'm a Florida State. Go Noles! But really though, I had to applaud them. They had their I can't remember the gentleman's role, but it was really impressive what they were doing. Do you see more, like, is the government helping? Because I see some countries that are doing a lot to reskill their workforces through by way of the university systems and other things. But like, do you think we're doing enough at that? Like, are we to talk about leveling the playing field? Are we pushing enough knowledge outward that are the schools able to do that? Are they innovative enough to be able to do that? Not everybody's University of Florida in that case, mature wise.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that, going back to when I was saying I had the practical experience in the classroom, and I think that helped me.
Yeah.
I think that's across the board with education. A lot of people never have really worked in the private industry. They're like lifelong educators. And I
Hmm.
think that they actually lack those skills. I think that we really do need to partner with the private and the institutions getting together to help them facilitate it. If they're ever, I mean, like you said, there's some Floridas that are going to stand out. I'm sure MIT and some other folks like
Yeah.
will have a great program, but like just to help everybody, I think we need to do more right now. Like from our end in doing testing and credentialing and stuff, like we have not really seen a lot from schools. And other than there being a lot of talk about it or saying like it's going to be required, we haven't really seen any like mandates or anything come down where it's like, this is the playbook to use. And so I think right now people are really just kind of on standby to see like what's going to happen. But yeah, I think we're going to get left behind in that race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I follow AI and stuff a lot. I know other countries, from the models they're doing to the power that sits behind it to be able to run the AI,
Yeah.
is they're taking off, and we're slow to start. And so I think we have a lot of catching up to across the board.
Yeah, they're very much skilling their workforces at the government level. It seems like I think Israel was one that there's like an app for it and everything they have to help you. And I thought it was really interesting. And I just wish, I think our universities are going to have to be a part of that and maybe even push it out into the communities, right? And not beyond just full time students that are there. Try to
Yeah.
help get that education to everybody.
I feel like just the disconnect that's there. If we talk about from an HR standpoint, the number of generations in the workforce or our Gen Z series, folks are saying, what is it like to work with the boomers or the Gen Xers or the millennials, and they're feeling that. I mean, just imagine the aggravated chasm between students that are learning natively and the tech dinosaur, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like going from Gen 1 to Gen 5 in our HR world,
Yeah.
that sort of depth has to be challenging, even for the ones who are really technically,
Yeah.
up to speed. Because if you're one of those faculty people who's teaching bleeding edge technology, like, can your peers even relate to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
The interesting thing, Julie, this last couple, I would say not even just the last couple weeks, I had some really colorful conversations around this, but like over the last year, I've noticed a couple of vendors have said this to me that, when we go in and sell our tool, when the payroll or the HR team has youth in it, more youth than not, they tend to be very, very, very open. And yes, we want it. We want it when it comes to the tech. Whereas the older generations are more, what about this? What about that? There's a lot of like guardrailing, right? And sort of to your point, pushing it off. And they're saying like the sales cycle for them is much easier when they have a younger crowd making the decision versus an older crowd. And I think that's kind of scary for the organization because if you're preventing adoption of things, you're falling behind, right? It's almost like we need to get everybody on board to say, hey, look, ride the wave. We don't you don't need to get smashed by it. So
At which point in time, universities and government are like totally screwed, right? Because there's this
yeah.
whole tenure and time in to get to where you're going to
Well,
go.
some
That is
some
such a
have to
part of
go to the
that.
state in order to get approval to make an investment in
Yeah,
tech.
yeah. Or
A
schools to
big
the
enough one.
board. Holy cow!
Yeah.
And these are elected people who don't necessarily have any real credentials at all. I know from being one of them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
So Brandon, just curious, like in the university systems, like we've seen a larger swath of kids saying, you know what, I don't necessarily need to go to college to do what I want to do. Are there revenues dipping from that perspective, or is that just media? I mean, are more people going to school now than before, or about the same, or what's it
No,
look
no,
like?
it's true. Like we're hearing that from all of our partners. So like there's certain degrees that like are strong, right? Like
Yeah.
nursing, if you're going to school to be a dentist, like they're filling those seats still. But your people that are just going for undergrad or just like a general business degree or something like that, enrollments are down, and it's definitely impacting
Yeah.
them, and that's why they're seeing layoffs. So
Do you think tech would help them if they modernized to create more? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's not enough. It's part, but do you think modernization is part of bringing people back?
Yes, but I think that the old style of like, it takes a semester to learn and master
Right.
something.
The curriculum.
We have
Yeah.
to shift away from that. Like this micro learning proves that you can iterate and move really
Yeah.
fast and learn stuff. I think that they're going to have to change the business model if they
Yeah.
want to be successful for the long term, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, well, think about it. I mean, in our own personal life, I almost always go to YouTube when I need to do something I don't know how to do. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, I look it up. I'm
Yeah.
like, how do we fix this? So
right.
it's a lifesaver. And you're right. The micro learning, it's right there when we need it in the flow, as we like to say, in the flow of work in HR. How do universities make this jump, though, to do that? I mean, how do we get away? How do we balance like the traditional classroom, semester long, take a test, read a book versus micro learning and hands on and things like that? Like, do they do more of that now, or what happens?
Whether it was intentional or not, I think these like smaller programs that they realized like enrollments were trending down. They started creating these smaller programs where it's like if you want to be like a CIO, we have like a CIO like executive track you can take, and it's like a year long. I think that was a good step in the right direction. I think from there though, it has to be something more than the C-suite it's offered to, and it has to be like for every school of business and school of whatever that they have, I think they need to start offering courses that are like that. And they have to be cheap and affordable for people. They have to be a couple $100. They go, they get a certificate or, something with it. And I think like in those courses, because I've actually done a couple of them myself, it actually is like not just like going and listen to somebody lecture to you. They actually give you stuff to do. You get assigned a project or a worksheet or something. When I left, I feel like I have like an actual understanding of it because I've actually done it. I've actually like in ramping up to the AI stuff, I mentioned some of these courses like on, prompt engineering and stuff like that. I've done those as well. And it was the same thing. It's like, they're not just telling you what to do. They're giving you examples and you're in their interface, like doing it. I think if they can move to that model,
Hmm.
there's still going to be the people that are like, hey, I need to be a doctor. And great, we have that path for you.
Yeah.
And for the executives, we have that for you as well. But then for the average person that's like starting out or like isn't committed to doing the 4-year degree right out of the gate, if you want to learn a skill and you want to go do it, and it's not necessarily blue collar, but it's like a step towards like a more professional career, we have these courses for you. You knock 3 to 5 of them out. It looks good on your resume and it gets you an entry level job. I think that that's what they need to
Yeah.
do.
Are you getting any sense for the fact, like, the business model in higher ed is a commercial model, right? There's a whole commercial model around it. And on the other end of the spectrum in K-12, we're also seeing, just inklings of ideas of completely re-engineering education and moving also to more tech-led K-12 situation where the commercial model's not the inhibition. It's probably like just changing the entire way we do things. Who do you think will get there first? Or do you ever see any like bleeding between what's happening beneath you and then where people are when you get them?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I really do feel like policy shapes a lot of that and who gets to make the decision. I mean, I think that states, like when it comes to K-12, may be able to actually move faster just because it's kind of left up to them, where these institutions, there's so many of them at each state and they all try to like, as a giant, move together in one direction. I think that makes it a little bit more difficult. I really could see that like K-12 starts shaping that differently. And I think too that like some of the states have done things where, they're like, hey, you don't have to just go to the public school system. The tax dollars you pay, if you want to use those to send your kid to a STEM program or something like that, you can do
Yeah.
so. And I
Yeah.
think that people having a choice will start making and forcing that quicker. Whereas in higher ed, like they kind of, you're kind of playing ball on their court, so to speak. So I definitely could see K-12 adopting faster.
Higher ed can either go or not go, right?
Yeah,
Go
exactly.
in, go out.
Julie
Yeah.
is a glutton, and she signed up to be a education board member, right, Julie?
I did. I did
How's that
until
going,
like
by the way?
Well,
How is
I
that?
had part of my where I'm at in my life had me downsize to a smaller house, which was technically out of district, which is one of the things that gets you off of the school
Oh,
board very
okay. You
quickly.
got fired?
So it wasn't intentional, but it did just happen that after, 3 years, listen, who should be doing those things for 6 years? It's a
Yeah.
6-year gig. This is not a Senate position. This is like a volunteer,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
unrewarding sort of a thing to do. So
Not to get on that tangent too much, but I think the high schools and the schools before, the before they get to college really have to do more too. Like, I just think about, like, my daughter's a senior and I just hear some of the classes she's taken. I'm like, you guys need to be doing some other things, but she's taken it upon herself to do that outside and whatever. But But I just think there's got to be a better way for us to get our workforce skilled. And listen, we've touched on this a little bit, but like we know about the massive glut of just gap in skills we have in trades, right? We don't have, right. They're building. I think there's I see the billboards now for the submarines and the ships that they're building. They don't have nearly enough people to actually do all that work. So I would love to see like more of that too. I think there's more technical skills we could be giving people, vocational type skills, I guess, as they used to call it, for those craftsman type purposes, because we have lost that skill set in America. We don't build things the way we did. And yeah, that bums me out too. So, well, look, this is all super fascinating. Brandon, I want to ask you, kind of your outlook on ed tech. Like, what are we going to be talking in 5 years, 10 years for the education system, for the students? Like, what do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I definitely think some of the things we've been talking about, I think things are going to move or shift over the next 5 years to this more of like micro learning environment, more digital. I think we're also going to see these companies at that point have rolled up into like one large platform across the board. And then I actually think that schools, we didn't talk about this, but schools, their endowment funds and stuff are starting to invest in ed tech, and they're trying to strategically align themselves like the money behind these companies.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be an interesting piece of it too, because at the end of the day, like they're paying a lot of money for these tools and stuff where they could really like kind of create, because some of the tools actually get created out of universities, and the universities just let that IP walk out the door with their people. And so I think we could see a shift on that front too at some point. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think they're going to have to find a way to rebrand. If not, they're going to turn into just real estate holdings. And I know no one has a plan for that. And so I think with that shift that it'll all push us in this new direction. And I think AI is going to open up a lot of opportunities for that too.
I love it. So listen, before we go, tell me about your book, man. I know you have a new book that's recently come out. I know you have some consultancy too with your EdTech experts, but talk about both those things and where people could connect with you.
Yeah, so edtechexperts.org. It is a consultancy, but it's also thought leadership. So do a lot of blogs and just, keeping up with what's going on in the edtech space in general. There is a lot of information too about just the SaaS industry and edtech and the software side of things. That's the easiest way to connect with me for sure. And then recently released the book, The Silent Leader. The idea there is I've been president and COO for several companies. Again, very fortunate they've been successful and eventually acquired. But in that time, really tried to find my place because, as you grow in an organization, you start like, it's just natural too to want to continue progressing. And then you kind of hit that ceiling where it's like, I can't get rid of my boss to like replace them. And also it's very easy when you're the operational person in a business you're touching all areas of the business day to day. And so you're in the grind with the people.
Yeah.
And what I found is like, I start becoming like the face of the company almost, if you will, because I'm in all the meetings and the CEO's out selling and, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing all that stuff from an investment side. And you're the one that's left there operating the business. And so what I found is like, there is like a craft to being the leader, but like muting yourself and being the doer that people rely on, but not crossing that boundary. And that has been, a very hard journey for me over the years because I get to that threshold where I feel like it's time and my skills and knowledge of, the functional knowledge of the company have like surpassed that person and people naturally come to me. So anyway, it was to help other people in that seat that maybe are, experiencing a COO type role for the first time or that are having that struggle, just to kind of share my experiences and how I navigated that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll share the links to all that, man. And I mean, very much a servant leadership theme there. I think I noticed that in your content, but also just in that book. So I need a copy, by the way. I gotta read it. So
one out.
Yeah, I love it, man. I appreciate it. We'll share your links here. All right, I got to ask you before we go. So I'm repping the Fernandina Beach Pirates. My parents went to Fernandina Beach High School. Your parents went to Fernandina Beach High School. You're an alumni. Your son is now playing there, I believe, right? He's going to play football.
Yeah, he's
playing
football.
What do we expect from the Pirates this year, man? Are they going to be good or what?
They're 2-0 starting out, and so it's looking promising. We just beat an in-county rival 49-6 last week. So
who was it? Yulee?
Hilliard.
All right.
So looking really good. We're going to Wolfson tonight, so over in Jacksonville. But yeah,
I love it.
And well, and the daughter's playing volleyball, and they're 3-1 on the year, but volleyball's going really well too. So
yeah. So is Pearson's my cousin. Pearson's your son. He's going to play. Yeah. He's playing. Yeah,
He's
football.
playing football, plays outside linebacker, and
Okay.
Adelaide's on the volleyball team, and she's a defensive specialist, so she essentially plays the 3 spots on the back of the court
Yeah.
whenever they're in. So
I love it, man. I love it. Well, shout out to the Fernandina Beach Pirates. I
yeah,
hope
there we
they
go.
do good. I hope they do good, man. It's the whole family's been there.
Yeah,
We've all just
exactly.
joined the family dinner table here for the last
That's
little
right.
bit of pie.
Oh
So
man,
thanks for that, Brandon.
Aunt Melinda would love to have you come over, man. She's a good cook. So shout
That's
out to
right.
Aunt Mimi. That's what I call her. But look, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with the audience, man. And we'll share your links to get everybody connected with you. And yeah, we'll be back with more episodes soon. Appreciate it, everyone.